us. It's a pleasure to be here with you all and to get this webinar on behalf of the Council of State Governments, Justice Center, and the National Reentry Resource Center. What I'd like to do is start off by talking about the goals of the webinar. And the first is to explore the ways of changing offender behavior through classroom. And that's one of the things we've done here in Virginia with the agency I was previously at. The second goal is to show why risk reduction is important to technology career training. The third goal is to discuss ways to implement risk reduction in technology career training. And the fourth goal, which is probably most important to a lot of folks, is discuss sustaining the training once release to the community occurs. And it means, what are we going to do with the offender when they're back in the community and they've had this training that you all have provided while they're incarcerated? We'll move to the next slide. And we're going to change offender behavior via the classroom. And the most important things we can do is treat the offender or a student in college or high school. And I know some folks don't use the term offender, and that's fine, and that may be what you're most comfortable with. And so definitely you can use whatever style you want to use, whatever term you want to use. But when I'm treating the offender like a student in college or high school, we think it's very important to provide them with class roles, a syllabus, an exam schedule, so that they know what's expected of them right from the start. Also provide them with any type of slides, textbooks, supplies they may need. Supplies can run from pencil to computers to other things that they're going to need. I know, again, to use an example, here in Virginia at the Department of Correctional Education, we were fortunate in the Second Chance Act grant that we had for technology careers was to go out and purchase computers and put them in the classroom setting for the students, and then also to put them in pod. The next one is to provide students with clear expectations, and that's very, very important. They need to know what's expected of them both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. Provide grades and feedback to their work performance. Again, very important. They know how they're progressing, as you know, and give them feedback, both positive and negative. But in negative feedback, let them know how they can improve, what they can do better, so that they can be successful in this program. Provide classwork that's evidence-based with a proven curriculum, and that's another key piece of it. It's important that that's evidence-based, that's been proven, whether it's been in an institutional setting, whether it's been in a classroom setting. And students with contact information for both the instructor and the institutional staff. Let them know who they can contact and when they can contact that person. Again, it's about treating that student like they're in college or high school. Many haven't had that experience, and you want to give them the full experience of this classroom setting. Moving along, emotional interaction for risk reduction. It's critical for both the offender and the staff. And it could be a new way of doing business for both the offender and staff. And they need to be trained in motivational interviewing and motivational interaction. And there's a number of resources that you can go to for information on that if you're not already doing it. But we needed to ensure that as well as the offenders are motivated to see the completion of the training. Studies have shown that motivational interviewing and interaction are evidence-based, and they're a means to reduce the risk of recidivism, and that's the key with this program. Next, motivational interactions within the institution. That can range from the correctional officer who's in the housing unit to the instructor in the classroom, up to the warden's level. always have to have motivational interactions with the offenders as they go through the program. And again, that's got to come all levels within the institution: the teachers, the instructors, the correctional officers, the counselors, superintendent, the warden, the sheriff, the principal of the school if you have a principal, whoever's leading the school program, and school administration. And also the releasing authority. That could be a court, a board, or any other type of releasing authority that oversees this offender's incarceration. Again, stressing enough, everybody's got to be involved in the motivational interaction with the offender. It's simple as a correctional officer saying, you're doing well in the classroom, I understand. Keep it up. That's a good thing. And then, of course, we know as the teacher or the instructor who's going to have the most contact with the offender in the classroom, keep that offender motivated. Keep him moving in the right direction. To ensure the interaction, the motivational interaction, staff must be trained. You got to, and that's, some institutions are resistant to this, but we have to keep in mind that motivation is a key piece of evidence-based work in the reduction of risk. So, looking at the training, we want to know how to motivate the offender to do well in class. Because as we all know, many offenders, this is their first time in a classroom at college level, or some even at a high school level. And they're not sure what's expected of them. They're not sure how to keep themselves motivated. So that's important, that you're working with them to keep them motivated to do well in class. That can be a critical piece within this project that you have. You have to have training in how to utilize rewards and sanctions for classwork, and also rewards and sanctions for behavior in and out of the classroom. So in the first one, when we talk about classwork, rewards and sanctions. Doing the classwork, they're doing it well. What are the rewards? What do you do to reward the offender? If they're not doing well, what do you have to do to sanction them? Sanctions can be a part of the motivation. Same thing for behavior within the classroom itself, not just about doing the work, but with the classroom. And again, also outside of the classroom. There has to be that expectation that if they're enrolled in this classroom experience, that they need to follow the rules, regulations of the institution and the school in order to keep participating. And that means not just in the classroom, but outside of the classroom. Motivational interviewing and interaction is all part of the evidence-based instruction. Again, it has to be part of the curriculum so that you keep the offenders motivated. Sometimes, and their use in the classroom, now good grades can result in a reward. Just like what we have with our own children or what we experienced when we were going to school. Good grades, you're going to get something. And the rewards, of course, have to be within the security restrictions of the facility. Understand that. You can't bypass security restrictions and regulations. But within the class, the school, the institution, the community, it can be small tokens of success. It can be something like increased recreation time, increased visitation with family, certificates. We all know that the individuals who are incarcerated, if they have something that they can bring back that shows they're doing well, if their grades are improving, the certificate. If they're ahead and they're behaving in the classroom, as you see in the next bullet, what are the rewards? Again, recreation time, increasing it, visitation time, time out of the cell, certificates, letting the family know. It's simple things, and it can be things that maybe a little bit more effort. But the more that we look at the rewards as part of this, the more we'll keep the offender motivated to do well in the classroom setting. And they're going to take that home with them when they leave the institution. Again, acknowledge the good work of the students. Have a newsletter you can put out within the institution. You can post it in the institution or within the school. I know in some facilities you have an education wing, you have an education dorm, and that you can post it to let everybody know what these individuals are doing. Also, very important, advise the courts, the board, the parole board, if that's the case, or others that have a role in the sentencing of this offender and then the release of this offender. Could be the prosecutors, who we know oftentimes don't think they have a role in reentry, but they really do. Use the media to get word out on the program. And that goes a long way towards the sustainment of the program once the federal funding ends for this initiative. We all know, those of us who have been involved in corrections for a long time, oftentimes the good things don't get publicized. It's only the bad things. But here you have a program, here you have an initiative that's working to improve the lives of the offenders, their families, and the community they're returning to. So use the media, get the word out, and keep pushing the media, because we do know that the media sometimes disregards what we have to say because it's not something that they grasp onto and they don't think folks want to know about. Contact the families and other significant others to let them know the good work is occurring. That's a critical piece, because for many offenders, they haven't had a chance to show their family that they can be successful, or their significant others that they can be successful. They're incarcerated, they've joined family or significant others, but here's where they're taking advantage of an opportunity. Those folks know, because that's probably where the offender's going to once they're released. And so, again, reduce the risk of recidivism, the risk of reoffending. And if the family know that the offender's doing something well, here's an opportunity to hold on to something and say, when this person gets home, we know that they have the capabilities of doing well. Hold graduation and completion ceremonies. It may not be full-scale graduation, but if the offenders have completed the program, hold a ceremony for them. Invite folks in, invite people within the institution to come by and participate, bring in speakers, whatever it may be, but work with the offenders in a type of ceremony so that they know they've been successful. And provide diplomas or certificates of completion, because that's going to be a critical piece when they get home, as you well know. Once they're released, they're going to have to show potential employers what they've done. And if they have as many certificates as possible, or diplomas, or whatever it may be, that show these employers, that's going to be very important for them. We also take a look at cognitive behavior change, which, as we know, is how to think for change. Working with the offender to think before acting. And in order to do that, we have to blend the cognitive change with the classroom work. We have to show how that goes hand in hand with changing the way they think and doing their classroom work. Because, again, for many of them, they really had that experience in the classroom before incarcerated. They behave, and you're going to have to change their thinking about that. Learning in the classroom to be successful as a student, something that's not easy for them, and that's going to be up to the instructor and the correctional staff to work with this individual, change the way they think. And you may have cognitive programs that the offenders will have gone through or are also participating in. So try to put that in classroom setting. Try to bring it all together and work hand in hand within the institution so that they take the classroom thinking and positive change back to their cell block, their pod, whatever it may be, and then when they get home. If they're well and they're thinking right within setting, the hope is that they'll continue to do that once they get back to their housing unit or their cell. Cognitive behavior change with the motivation leads to positive change. And a positive classroom environment and a positive experience for them. Again, they may have had that positive experience in their life, especially in a classroom setting. You know, been thrown out of school, especially those of you who work with younger juvenile offenders. So they've never had that positive classroom environment and experience. Here's your opportunity to do that and use the kind of change with the motivation so that they can experience that. Positive experience, as we know, that they're going to have within the institution can lead to the positive experience at home and in their community once they're released. You can also have the offender who's returning home who's motivated to change in all ways. That's what you're going to have, all because of that positive educational experience. That may be the only positive experience they have in the institution, as you know. For those who have been working in the institutional setting for many years, in a vocational setting for many years, this classroom experience may be the only time they have a positive experience while incarcerated and change their behaviors when they get home. So why is reduction important to technology career training? Well, it's really simple. Risk reduction to reduce recidivism, and that's the goal of this. Reduced recidivism leads to crime rates, which is a positive for the communities. Reduced crime rate, reduced victimization. And that's what it is all about, less crime victims. So as you can see, you have reduced risk, recidivism rates, victims, save with reduced jail, detention, and prison beds. It's about also for those of you who have to face the funders when they say, why are we doing this type of program? Well, it's simple. You should sustain this program, folks. That funders, because the positive experience these offenders have, the way they've changed their behavior and the way they've been motivated to keep being successful means they're not coming back in here and save you money. Risk, recidivism, crime rate, and victimization means successful programming and sustained funding, which is what I was just talking about. More important than anything, though, is that about public safety. And the fact is, when these offenders go home, they've had this positive experience. You've worked with them from a cognitive standpoint. You've motivated them. You've given them a new career to look at through the technology training. A chance for them to be successful once they get back home. It is again, you have reduced risk, recidivism, crime rates, and victims, which leads to successful programming, sustained funding, and have a successful reentry model that you can sell in your community. What you want to do, you want to sell it in the community, get the media in there, let folks know what you're doing. So what do you do about teaching the offender a new skill or a trade for use in the community, which leads to risk reduction? Well, again, just the previous slides, a new trade or skill means that you're enhancing their employability, giving them a big chance at finding a job with what you've given them within the institute, that new trade or that new skill. Their enhanced employability, as we all know, it leads to better salary. If they have this technology training and they can use it in the community, we all know that they're going to have a far better salary than if they were going back and working in manual labor or fast food or hospitality services. The better salary, they're going to be able to provide more support for their family as well as themselves. And all of that can lead to a positive contributing member of the community. And that's working on. That's what you're working on with the evidence-based practices that you're using within the institution. the motivational interviewing, the cognitive behavioral change. It's all lead to a positive contributing member of the community. And that means that you're going to have for the offender self-esteem, being motivated to do well, and being motivated to change their behaviors. Again, when you look at the training home, you have a new trade or skill, which leads to enhanced employability, improved salary, which then leads to better support of the family and self, and become a contributing member to the community. They're motivated to change, and all of that equals a successful reentry model. The risk of reoffending upon release, of course, we know, can result in the following. It's training on the outside. If we do a good job of reducing that risk, then that means we've done a good job of improving the chances that this offender will sustain the training on the outside. This offender will be motivated to seek employment and to work with others to be employed in this technology career. Maintain that gainful employment because they're a career now. And as we know, many offenders are released. They don't go into any type of career training or type of career employment. But if they can get into the technology world, chances are they're going to maintain that gainful employment. And as a result, they're going to contribute to the community as well as themselves and family. And they're going to avoid new victimization resulting from renewed criminal behavior. And again, community safety, public safety. That's what the successful reentry is all about. It's a smart way of doing business for us. Implementing risk reduction strategies. Talk about that for a minute. Of course, leadership in the institution and school is important. They're going to set the tone for using risk reduction strategies. If they're on board, it's going to be difficult for the instructors, the correctional officers, and others to set up what we want to see happen with the program itself. So you have to have the leadership on board. To sell this concept to the staff and how it helps everyone. Leadership is critical in this. Critical with leadership because they can sell it to the offenders. And they can sell it to the employers, the families, and the communities. Makes changes necessary to implement the strategies. We all know that. So it has to lead the way in the implementation of risk reduction strategies. Leadership's got to be on board. They've got to be the leaders. Whatever strategies you're going to employ within your technology career program. Looking at implementing the curriculum to support risk reduction strategies, again, the curriculum must be evidence-based. It's many of you have already chosen what your curriculum is going to be. To look at it, make sure that it's been proven. Make sure it's a curriculum that folks have used and have been successful with it. It's evidence-based, that there are studies that have shown that this works. And include the motivational interviewing and interactions within the curriculum. You're going to have to motivate the individuals, as we know, with the curriculum. Plug pieces into it. Let teachers know, let the instructors know that they keep the offenders motivated, get them some training on motivational interviewing. Include cognitive behavioral change strategies that we've previously talked about. Again, involve training. That's okay. Do the thing, it will be worthwhile in the long run. Reward incentives for performance. We've talked about them. You have to have them if you want to make this successful. That's the curriculum. If they're following the curriculum, reward them. If they're not, what can you do to improve them, to motivate them? Again, involve everybody. Instructors, teachers, correctional officers, anybody involved with regular contact with the offender population. Reduction strategy into the release plan. Contact with potential employers is essential. One of you can do that, of course, is reaching out to where the offenders will be returning, but a way of doing it in potential employers and we'll talk a little bit about that. Let what you're doing. Maintain contact with families and support systems so that they can understand the expectations of the offenders while they're enrolled in the program and what's going to be expected of them when they're released. And oftentimes we forget to have contact with the community supervision agencies to understand what's occurred inside the walls. Sometimes probation and parole may not understand what the offender has gone through within the institution. They don't know about the classroom programs that have occurred. Let them know. Reach out to them. Because that offender gets released to community-based supervision, they have a certificate or a diploma, and they can go to their supervising officer, and they show them that officer didn't have any questions about when they got this and what they were involved in. Let's have contact with treatment and other service providers, because as we know, the offenders aren't just lacking educational development. They may be involved in substance abuse, mental health treatment, and require other types of services. When implementing risk reduction strategies into employment in the community, again, ensure that the employer knows the benefits of risk reduction strategies. And that's critical to work with the community supervision agency so that you can both tag team this and let the employer know that the offender's been involved in motivational interviewing, been involved in cognitive restructuring and thinking for a change, has been involved in an evidence-based curriculum. The expectations of the employers are based on these strategies. And the employer is going to be looking for their employees to continue types of strategies when they're released into the community. So you have to work with the offenders and let them know that not all employers are going to be that way. And employers' expectations of offenders based on the strategy. Again, it's working with the potential employees or those employees that you've already established to let them know what the offenders have learned and what you should expect of the offenders. It do it to make it work for everyone. Everyone has to know the expectations, what the offenders have been through, they benefited, and what the curriculum's been, and what progress has been for these individuals. Maintaining the training once release occurs. Again, as I mentioned previously, look at the community outreach with potential employers. Into the institution to meet with the offenders, with the instructors, with other staff, with the institutional leadership. Let them see what goes on in the institution. Many of them have probably never been inside a correctional institution, and this is a great experience for them to come in and see that's not just about locking up the individual, but about teaching them something. And especially the curriculum you're involved in, technology training. Let's see this. Show them the curriculum. Show what works in the institutional setting. And if we'll visit the potential employers with the community supervision staff, and if possible with the offenders. Some institutions for low-risk offenders will let these go out with supervision staff to meet with the employees prior to release. It's part of the pre-release planning about that. If you're not already doing it, think about it. Go hand in hand with the community supervision staff, both the institutional staff and community supervision staff. Even if you don't take the offender, both of you go and sit down with potential employees because you want to sell this program. You're able to sustain this program, and you want it to be successful. And support ongoing interaction between offenders and potential employers. Motivate the offenders, if you bring employers into the institution, motivate the offenders to maintain that contact, to reach out to the offenders, to have contact on a regular basis. It's just like when you're getting ready to graduate from college and you've had a job interview. Keep that motivation going. Contact going. So you sell the training and the offender. And selling the training, it's evidence-based, it's in-based because you've worked with the industries, you've worked with the technology careers, that this is needed, and that you have certificates or apprenticeships are going to be completed and diplomas. Sell the offender. They've earned grades in the classroom. They've done something that's successful. They've accomplished something in skill development. They haven't just sat back and gone through a simple class. Technology careers, technology training is something that is specialized. So really sell that, and the fact that the offender was able to participate in this program and earn grades and certifications and apprenticeships, whatever it may be, you have to sell both the training and the offender and sell them hand in hand. And look at what the offender brings to the job. The skills for the position they're applying for. Something that some other folks may not bring to that position. Or they're bringing skills that are on par with somebody coming out of a technical school or a high school or a college or a community college. So the offender brings skills to the position. You're going to bring that attitude to succeed because you've worked with them on motivational interviewing and cognitive behavior. They've got a positive attitude. They know what it's like to succeed now because they've completed this program. Have the ability to learn in all types of environments because let's face it, they've learned in an institution, whether it's a prison or a jail or a detention center, then they learned in a pretty tough environment. Have a willingness to keep learning. They've learned in a tough environment. That means they were willing to learn, and they want to keep learning because the other piece of it is you've motivated them, and you've worked on their cognitive thinking. Community supervision conditions to support successful reentry and risk reduction. The offender brings that. They're on community supervision, but that's a positive because that supports what they're doing. They have family and significant other support systems because now had that contact with the family and the significant other. You've let them know what the offenders are going to bring once they're released, what they're going to bring to the community. And let them and other services to support successful reentry and employment know about this. Let them know what the offender brings to them. They've been successful. If they can be successful in the classroom in an institutional setting, then there's a chance they may well be successful in treatment and other support services. When you're in the community supervision agency into the risk reduction strategy and training, provide detailed information on the training to them. Let them know what these have been through in the classroom setting. Give that information so the PO can't say, well, we learned in the institution. Give information ahead of time. And as I said earlier, if possible, bring the community supervision staff into the institution to observe the training. Let them know that they can come in anytime working with the institution to see what's going on in the classroom, to see what type of training is being provided. I know when I was at the Department of Correctional Education here in Virginia and I went down and looked at the institutions and what was going on in the institutions, it was just amazing to me to see what type of courses the offenders were taking. Take the training to the community supervision agencies, meet with the staff. Have community supervision staff meet with potential and established employers and work with them on that. It may be that you have to leave the institution, the instructors and the teachers and the correctional staff, to work with the potential employees and the community supervision staff. How community supervision agencies support the offender? Discuss expectations of supervision with the offender and how risk reduction impacts supervision. That means continuing what they learned in the institution once they hit the community and working with the supervision staff in the community. And the hope is that the supervision agency has implemented evidence-based practices. The community supervision agency supports the offender by meeting with the family and significant others to go over the expectations of the supervision and what the offender is bringing out of the institution. And the employer to discuss supervision and expectations of the offender, the supervision agency, and the employer. Eric's hand in hand in this, and the employee needs to know when the offender comes out, not only have they had the technology training, but they have expectations. And that's with the treatment agencies and other support units. Look at the outreach with nonprofits and support services. Very important for follow-up services and training. They can provide mentoring to continue the positive change. They can provide support groups with individuals who have gone through similar type experiences. They can do job placement assistance. They can do work with the offenders on resume writing, interviewing, application assistance. And that may be some of the things you're doing with the offender in the institution before they're released, but keep going. Do the community outreach with the nonprofits and the support services. Continue the educational assistance once they hit the community. The offender's going to need that. They're going to need educational assistance. At apprenticeships and internships and similar types of initiatives in the community. So work with the communities, work with profits, work with the support services in all those areas. Other things you should consider when you're working with the profits, potential employees, and others is Fidelity federal bonding and its advantages to the offenders, the federal benefits for hiring offenders, community involvement in reentry at the local level. Many of you all may be working with local reentry councils or state reentry councils, it may be, but keep the community involved. And again, as I said earlier, bring media to the institution. Set the media on what you're doing. And once you have sites established in the community, bring media to those job sites. Show them how these individuals transition from an institutional setting to a community setting, how they're implementing their program, what they learned in their programs. Showcase the program to legislators, funders, and key stakeholders. And it's a difficult sell when some of these individuals may have their own children that they're putting through college or educational programs. And you've been able to do this with federal funding, but show them the advantages if they continued this type of funding for these individuals. I'll look to Sean and Sia as far as questions, and if there's anything I can answer that would be of assistance.
Thank you very much, Andrew. We will now begin the question and answer session. To ask a question, please type into the Q&A panel located at the bottom right hand of your screen. I will read the questions coming in from the audience and then give time for Andrew or myself to answer. We will best to answer as many of these questions as possible. The first question I have for you, Andrew, is many of us contract with outside agencies such as colleges or local computer programming staff that have had very little interaction with offenders. So how do we then train them to take the programs that they're currently running and adapt them to this population?
Well, I think one of the most important things to do, if at all possible, bring those individuals into the institutions to meet with the offenders in a group setting. Let them see that these individuals are, number one, motivated to be involved in a program. Number two, they're folks just like any of us that, yeah, they've been incarcerated, but it's important to that contact with them, to interact with these individuals, either individual or group setting, whatever the institution can set up. Because as you say, many times schools and colleges and folks on the outside, this is their first contact with offenders. And they see the stuff on TV and such. They don't learn that these folks are really motivated, that they really want to do well. And this can create a great support system for them. If you can get them in the institution, I think that's critical.
Okay. And to also add to that particular question, how do we train these staff to understand that DLC is at times about safety, custody, and control, that they must abide by all rules, whether they understand them or not?
So they should have to go through an orientation training. Any teacher or instructor or individual coming into the institution that's going to be providing the instruction should have to go through an orientation program, should have to be screened, should have to sit down with the institutional staff so that they're fully aware that safety and security comes first.
Okay. And can you give any examples of some evidence-based curriculums that are out there that grantees can sort of kind of look at to get incorporate that into their program?
Well, I think when you look at the curriculums, to see that evidence-based, first you need to look at, is it effective training? And I know one of the things we did in Virginia when we looked at it is we met with the community college that was going to provide the actual coursework. Sat down with them and we looked at the curriculum. We had our staff look at the curriculum, so the IT staff, because they're the ones who knew best whether or not this type of technology training was going to be effective or not. I mean, that's one of the things we did here. I think the other thing is I need to sit down with you all, in all honesty, Sordia, and we can come up with some other examples and provide it to the grantees.
Okay. And then to that end, when you talked about IT and technology, oftentimes offenders are not allowed to use things like the internet or while they're currently incarcerated. How do we then train them to be able to fill out applications once they finish the training?
Very good question, and a situation we faced here in Virginia, and I know that many states face and many localities face. One I think you have to look at is there are what we could refer to as dummy programs, so to speak, that you can put into the computers that the offenders can use that don't access the internet, but gives them examples of applications and such. Now, the difficult piece is how do we allow them to apply for positions prior to release? And that thing that hasn't quite been solved. Now, I know some states have gone to using with filtering. And so look to see what you do to filter for internet access so that you can then allow the individuals that are incarcerated to access the application processes. It's a difficult decision, I know, for many institutions, but I know some states have done it. I believe Florida may have done it, and Virginia is working on it now, I know, so offenders can access the internet, but through a filtered system.
Okay. And what strategies would you suggest in getting employers that currently do not hire convicted felons to change their policies?
I think it goes back to what we discussed in the webinar, and the first thing is that there are some advantages to it in that you have the federal tax benefits. It's a one-time tax benefit. That can sometimes be a selling point. The other piece of it is that this offender has learned in that very difficult setting and should take a chance working with this individual because this individual has been motivated to go through this program and to complete the program, and that they're coming out very well trained through a very tough environment. It's a lot of selling that goes on to it. You really have to market it, and you have to work with them to let them know that the individual is going to be on community-based supervision in all likelihood, that this individual has through a tough setting, but they have made positive changes in their life, and they may not find that somebody coming from the community, somebody that have somebody looking over their shoulder also. and they support systems already in place.
And I want to add to that also, one of the grants I have, what they did was for companies that would not hire ex-offenders or individuals with felony convictions, they went to them, and instead of asking them to hire them, they asked them to do mock interviews. And, you know, and a person HR person may be willing to help them do that. And then they would send in sort of their best candidates, those individuals who were actually really good matches. And so after the interview, the HR person came back and said, well, you know, this guy was really good. Maybe we need to rethink how we hire individuals. And so just, you know, thinking outside the box, I think, is really going to be good, as well as helping them understand the programs that you're running.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. And I also think if you have an HR department at your institution, have them sit down with the offenders and do some mock interviews also, so that they are prepared. And again, it's what I said earlier, which is if you get some of these employees to come by the institution and meet with the individuals so that they can see that they're humans, that they have something that they can contribute when they're released, may be a good selling point for them.
I have a question regarding that some work opportunity tax credits are being cut out for felonies. Do you know whether or not there's any truth to that?
I am not aware of that. I have not heard that. But the federal budget, as we all know, and the cuts that are occurring, that's something I think we would need to take a look at and see if indeed that is true.
Okay. In terms of community outreach, when individuals are leaving prison, oftentimes there's a lag between when they complete the class and their actual date of release. How do we bridge that gap to ensure that there's knowledge retention?
Yeah, that's an issue I know we've faced here in Virginia, because some of the offenders have a longer period of incarceration than we would like them to have. I think one of the things you really have to look at is your target population. And, of course, looking at it from the perspective of we really should focus on those individuals who, when they complete the program, are as close to release as possible. If that's not possible and the individual is going to be incarcerated for a longer period of time, one of the things we may have to look at are some refresher classes, some online training if that's available, online refreshers. I'm working with the instructors to see if they can come in and do some tutoring to keep everybody up to speed. I think you really have to look at a lot of different avenues, but first and foremost, try to target, and it's oftentimes difficult, I know, but try to target your population so that they're as close to release as possible.
Okay. And the next is when some of our programs are, for only a specific period of time, but they need additional training to move on the position or things like that, how do we then begin to bridge that gap too, so that once they're released, they can go to local community colleges, local vocational trainings, and continue the education that they started while they were incarcerated?
Well, as we know, the tough part is the funding that they would need once they're released and to continue with that. And I think one of the places you mentioned is the community colleges, which appear, from what I've seen, both in Virginia and nationwide, are more amenable to working with an offender population. And that's prior to release, if possible. Find where the offender's going when they're released, find out what resources are there, community colleges or technical colleges, and working with the institution and the supervising agency is to reach out to those institutions of learning as what fund might be available, what classroom instruction might be available, what partnerships might be available. Also look to the nonprofits that have small funding opportunities that work very closely with the offender population. It could be Goodwill, it could be Salvation Army. They may have some funds to help sustain the offender once they're learning in the community, may be able to pay for some of their education, even if it's partial. So that, again, it's really looking at who are your partners out there, who can you reach out to, and start establishing those partnerships with those learning institutions prior to release, so they know the type of individual you have coming out who may require some additional training.
Okay. And then one of the last questions, if anyone else, again, if you have questions, please feel free to type them into the question and answer box at the lower right-hand corner. We have a question regarding individuals we've been through the training, they've actually received a job. How do we work with this individual on job retention, being able to keep that job for past just the 30, 60, 90-day mark, but for years and years?
Well, I can tell you as an old PO from many years ago, I would just threaten them. No, that's certainly not evidence-based. But I think, again, when we look at motivational interviewing and the cognitive behavioral work, that has to continue in the community. Now, it may be that they're going to need a mentor. It may be going to have to go to support if they're not on community-based supervision. But if community-based supervision, of course, it's working with the supervising agency. But it's real important to stress to the offender prior to release and then immediately after release, if you can do outreach, this is cool for them. This is an opportunity that they may not get again, and they utilize all their resources that they've developed while incarcerated and in the community. And while it sounds easy, I know it's not. It's very difficult. But I also have to look to their support systems, their family and their significant others, and to showing them how successful they can be if they retain this type of job in the technology world, and what the opportunities are for them, how to enhance and expand their opportunities if they are working in the technology career. And the longer they stay at that job, the better prepared they are in the long run for a great career. It takes a lot of work, though. It's not easy.
Okay. You could spend sort of a minute or so really talking about the future of career technology and how is this going to play a part in recidivism reduction and how this is going to really play a part as we begin to move away from incarcerating everyone to using more community supervision. How important our career technology is going to be?
Well, I think that, as we know, technology is changing every day. Every time you turn around, there's another type of phone, there's another type of computer, another type of laptop. You have, when you think of things like Kindle and iPads and such, the opportunities, I think, are never ending in the technology career world. And the more we can direct offenders into that type of career, the better off we're going to be in reducing recidivism. Because that's where I think you're going to see the future of the job market. Because much can be done through technology. They're going to need technicians. They're going to need programmers. They're going to need system developers. Whatever it may be, they're going to need from I guess the lowest level of staffing to the highest level. And it's back to your other question, which was, once they find themselves in a job, how do they sustain, how do you keep them motivated to work 3, 5, 10 years down the road? I just think that it's wide open in technology careers, and once you can get somebody in there and you can show them the benefit of it, especially an offender, you really reduce the risk of recidivism for those offenders who get involved in technology careers, because it is so wide open and there's so much occurring.
Well, I want to thank you, Andrew Malloy, for your insightful presentation of incorporating principles of risk reduction into career technology programs. I also want to thank Sean Rogers for setting up and handling the logistics involved in getting this webinar scheduled today. And lastly, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to participate. As a way to improve our technical assistance, we ask that you complete a short survey that will appear as you log out. We'll email a link to the recording of this presentation in the next few days. The link will also be made available on the National Reentry Resource Center's website, www.nationalreentryresourcecenter.org. resourcecenter.org. This now concludes the webinar.
Thank you, Saudi. I appreciate it.